The story of Athens in the Peloponnesian War is one of ambition, resilience, and ultimately hubris. What began as a city's quest for greatness ended in ruin, as Athens, once the shining light of Greek civilization, succumbed to the consequences of its overreach and arrogance. The Peloponnesian War, which pitted Athens against its rival Sparta, was not merely a military conflict but a clash of ideologies. Democracy against oligarchy, naval power against land superiority, and ambition against restraint. In the end, it was Athens' own hubris that brought about its downfall. Part 1. The Rise of Athenian Power and the Seeds of Arrogance. Following the Persian Wars, Athens emerged as the preeminent naval power in Greece. Through the formation of the Delian League, a coalition of city-states ostensibly united to protect Greece from Persian threats, Athens amassed wealth and influence, with its fleet patrolling the Aegean Sea. Under the leadership of Pericles, Athens transformed into a thriving center of culture, democracy, and intellectual pursuits. The city was adorned with magnificent temples, theaters, and academies, symbolizing its status as the cultural and intellectual heart of Greece. However, as Athens' power grew, so did its ambition. Pericles envisioned an Athenian empire that would stretch across the known world, a city whose influence would rival that of Persia. The Delian League, initially a mutual alliance, became an instrument of Athenian control. City-states that tried to withdraw from the League faced swift and brutal reprisals. Athens demanded tributes, enforced loyalty, and established garrisons, effectively transforming its allies into subjects. This transition from protector to oppressor sowed the seeds of resentment. Sparta, the dominant land power of Greece, watched with increasing alarm as Athens expanded its influence and consolidated control over the Aegean. To the Spartans, Athens' imperial ambitions threatened the autonomy of all Greek city-states. Tensions simmered as Athens, confident in its naval supremacy, continued to impose its will across the region. Part 2. The Peloponnesian War begins, a war of attrition. The Peloponnesian War officially began in 431 BCE, with Sparta and its allies launching an invasion of Athenian territory. True to Pericles' strategy, the Athenians refused to meet the Spartan army in open battle, instead retreating behind the city's massive walls and relying on their navy to sustain them. Pericles' plan was one of endurance. Athens would avoid land battles, protect its resources, and outlast Sparta's attacks, believing that its financial and naval strength would eventually bring victory. For the first few years, this strategy seemed effective. Although the Spartans devastated the Athenian countryside, they could not penetrate the city's fortifications. Athens, supplied by its fleet, continued to flourish within its walls. However, this defensive approach came at a cost. The crowded conditions within the walls, compounded by poor sanitation and inadequate supplies, created an environment ripe for disease. In 430 BCE, a deadly plague swept through Athens, decimating a large portion of the population. The once confident Athenians found themselves ravaged not by Spartan swords, but by illness. Pericles himself fell victim to the plague, and with his death, Athens lost its most capable leader. In the power vacuum that followed, factions within Athens began to disagree on strategy, with some advocating for continued endurance, while others pushed for a more aggressive approach. Despite these setbacks, Athenian confidence remained unshaken. Even after the devastation of the plague, many in Athens believed their city was destined for greatness, its supremacy assured by the gods. Yet, this belief, this hubris, would soon lead them down a path of ruin. Part 3. The Sicilian Expedition, a Fatal Overreach. In 415 BCE, Athens launched what would become one of the most disastrous campaigns in its history: the Sicilian Expedition. Alcibiades, a charismatic yet controversial Athenian general, persuaded the assembly to support an ambitious plan to conquer the island of Sicily, specifically targeting the city of Syracuse. Alcibiades argued that by taking Sicily, Athens could gain valuable resources and a new base of operations, allowing it to dominate the western Mediterranean. The expedition was a massive undertaking, involving over 200 ships and thousands of soldiers, a considerable portion of Athens' resources and manpower. But from the beginning, the campaign was plagued by misfortune and poor planning. Alcibiades was recalled to Athens shortly after the fleet set sail due to accusations of sacrilege and, fearing for his life, defected to Sparta. Now deprived of one of its key leaders, the Athenian fleet arrived in Sicily unprepared for the scale of the resistance they would face. The Syracusans, with help from Sparta, mounted a fierce defense, and what began as an offensive campaign quickly turned into a protracted siege. Supplies dwindled, morale plummeted, and the Athenian forces found themselves trapped in a foreign land. In 413 BCE, the Spartans sent reinforcements, including a skilled general, Gylippus, to aid Syracuse. The Athenian fleet, already weakened, was ambushed and decimated in the harbor. The army, stranded without support, was captured or killed as they attempted to retreat overland. The Sicilian expedition was a catastrophic loss for Athens, both in terms of lives and resources. The defeat shattered the city's sense of invincibility, and for the first time, Athens faced the grim reality that its ambitions had outstripped its means. Part 4. The Final Blow, Lysander and the Fall of Athens. The defeat in Sicily emboldened Sparta, which sought to capitalize on Athens' weakened state. With funding from Persia, Sparta built a powerful navy capable of challenging Athens at sea. Lysander, a Spartan general known for his cunning and ruthlessness, assumed command of this fleet, determined to end Athens' dominance once and for all. In 405 BCE, Lysander dealt the decisive blow to Athens at the Battle of Aegospotami. Catching the Athenian fleet off guard, Lysander launched a surprise attack, annihilating nearly the entire Athenian navy in a matter of hours. Athens, stripped of its ability to control the sea, was cut off from its food and resources. With Sparta blockading its port, the city faced starvation and unrest. In 404 BCE, after months of siege, Athens surrendered. The terms were harsh. The city's famous long walls were dismantled, its navy reduced to a handful of ships, and its empire dissolved. The once mighty Athens, which had dreamed of empire and glory, was now humbled, brought low by the very ambition that had driven its rise. Part 5. The Lessons of Hubris and the Enduring Legacy of Athens. The fall of Athens serves as a timeless reminder of the dangers of hubris. Driven by its desire for dominance, Athens pursued power at any cost, believing that its greatness would protect it from failure. In reality, it was this very arrogance that led to its undoing. By overreaching and underestimating its enemies, Athens transformed allies into rivals and turned potential victories into ruinous defeats. Epilogue: the aftermath and the revival of Athenian ideals. The defeat of Athens in the Peloponnesian War was more than just a military loss. It marked the end of an era in which Athens had been the unrivaled cultural and intellectual center of Greece. However, while Athens was humbled on the battlefield, its defeat did not destroy its legacy. Instead, the values and ideals that Athens had championed endured, taking on new forms and inspiring future generations in ways that even its architects could never have anticipated. Part 1. The Long Shadow of Defeat. In the years following the war, Athens faced a period of deep political and social turmoil. The Spartans installed the 30 Tyrants, an oligarchic regime that imposed strict rule, purging democratic sympathizers and instilling fear across the city. Many Athenians, disillusioned and oppressed, began to question the very foundations of their society. They wondered if their pursuit of power and empire had been worth the sacrifice of their values. But the rule of the 30 tyrants did not last long. Within a year, a group of exiled democrats, led by the general Thrasybulus, returned to overthrow the tyrants, restoring democracy to Athens. This restoration marked the beginning of a new phase for Athens, a phase not defined by imperial ambitions but by introspection and resilience. The experience of defeat, combined with the brief but brutal rule of the 30 tyrants, forced Athens to reevaluate its priorities. Freed from the burdens of empire, Athens began to focus on the values it had once prized above all: intellectual inquiry, artistic expression, and democratic governance. Part 2. The Philosophical Legacy and the Athenian Golden Age of Thought. In the wake of Athens' defeat, a new generation of thinkers emerged, deeply affected by the war and the lessons it imparted. Among them was Socrates, who had lived through the height of Athenian power and its subsequent fall. Socrates became known for his relentless questioning, challenging Athenians to examine their beliefs, their values, and the very essence of virtue. Through his method of inquiry, Socrates sought to cultivate self-awareness and moral integrity, qualities that he believed were essential to a just society. Although Socrates was eventually put to death by the Athenian state on charges of corruption,